The resume slapped my cheek pages, fanning out across the hardwood floor like leaves in a gust of wind. The staple grazed my skin. Small sting, bigger insult. "This is trash," he declared, his voice slicing through the tension in the boardroom. 5 other executives sat frozen. "Try harder next time." That was Jacob Trask, 31-year-old son of the CEO and freshly promoted VP of Strategic Development at Milford Sterling Investments in Seattle. I'm 31 too, but that's where our similarities end. I bent to gather the pages my economics degree from the University of Washington, my CFA certification, and the portfolio outlining my proprietary forecasting model. It had outperformed industry benchmarks by 16.8% across 3 years. All dismissed as trash because I didn't have a trust fund or a legacy last name. "Thank you for your time," I said, jaw-tight voice, trembling. The silence behind me as I walked out burned hotter than his words. In the elevator, I clutched my pages like armor. That was the interview I thought could change my life. And it did, but not in the way I expected. My name is Clara Monroe. Not the one I was born with, but the name I adopted after I realized power is easier to claim when you walk in with presence. I grew up in Boise, Idaho, above my aunt's antique shop, learning to log inventory before I could spell profit. At 16, I balanced the books. At 20, I got a full ride to UW. And by 27, I'd built a market algorithm that mapped the emotional drivers behind investor behavior. Things Wall Street ignored, things I didn't. For years, I refined it at Beacon Ridge Advisory, a small firm that gave me a shot when big names wouldn't. My model didn't fit conventional boxes, but when it shielded clients from the tech slide of 2020, people started listening. That's why I thought Milford Sterling might finally recognize value. They didn't. The day after the interview, I walked into work with something different in my step. My boss, Eleanor Bishop, 66, sharp as cut glass and founder of Beacon Ridge, noticed right away. What happened? I told her everything. The resume, the smirk, the sting. She didn't blink. Instead, she pulled up a chair beside me. "Clara," she said, "do you know why I bet on you?" I shook my head. "Because you see what others miss? That's not learned, it's earned. Show me your latest build." For the next hour, I laid it all out, how I tracked behavioral data from social patterns, subtle political shifts, and even viral sentiment. How my model could anticipate why a shift was coming, not just when. Eleanor leaned back silent for a beat. Then, "You're head of predictive strategy, effective immediately. Team funding, full license. Make it bulletproof." "Why now?" I asked. "Because humiliation is fuel," she said. "Use it." Over the next 18 months, I did. My team grew from 3 to 15. We restructured the model, trained it on global data, and stress-tested it under worst-case scenarios. And then the shock hit. A seemingly rock-solid South American market collapsed after a surprise regime change. Global investors panicked. Banks floundered. Except us. 3 months earlier, my system had picked up micro-signals, debt acquisition rates, shipping delays, and a sudden spike in social unrest tags. We pivoted clients ahead of the crash. The aftermath. Our firm was one of the few that posted gains. Big clients took notice and defected from Milford Sterling in waves. One by one, they asked for the anonymous strategist behind the forecast. I wasn't anonymous much longer. Jacob Trask's father called our office directly. Wanted a meeting. With me. He didn't know I was the one his son humiliated. He just knew my name now carried weight. But Jacob did remember. When he entered the room, he paused. "Clara Monroe," he said quietly. I smiled. "You said I should try harder." So I did. Unusual trading patterns. Slight but telling shifts in international shipping metrics. A sudden replacement in a key finance ministry halfway around the globe. We had already repositioned our clients' portfolios. While major firms bled millions, our accounts stayed stable. That's when whispers began across the industry about a small firm in Seattle whose predictions had outmaneuvered the collapse. Who was the mind behind it? The call came on a rainy Tuesday. I was reviewing a performance report with my team when Eleanor Bishop stepped into the room. "Clara, my office." I followed, expecting a problem. Instead, she shut the door behind us and handed me her phone. "Someone wants a word with you." I raised an eyebrow and took it. "This is Clara Monroe." The voice on the other end was taut. "Ms. Monroe, this is Everett Trask." My breath hitched. Everett Trask, founder and CEO of Trask and Rowan Capital. And father of Jacob Trask? The same VP who had thrown my resume in my face 18 months ago. "We've just lost $30 million and our internal team missed key signals. I'm told you didn't." He didn't recognize my voice. Of course not. He wasn't in the room when his son humiliated me. "I'll need access to your data," I said flatly. "All of it." "Yes, of course. Anything. Can you come to our offices this afternoon? I'll be there at 3. I handed the phone back to Eleanor, who studied me in silence. "You're going to help them?" she asked. "I'm going to help them see exactly what they missed." The ride up to Trask and Rowan's executive floor felt surreal. I had walked in 18 months earlier, hoping to join them. Today, I returned with leverage and Eleanor by my side. The receptionist led us to the same glass-walled conference room where my resume once hit the floor. This time, the room was full. Everett Trask, 2 board members, and 5 tense-looking analysts. They rose when we entered. Ms. Bishop Everett greeted. Then he glanced around. "Where's your strategist?" "You're looking at her?" Eleanor replied, nodding to me. His eyebrows lifted. "You're the one who predicted the downturn?" I nodded. "Correct." 2 of the executives squirmed. They'd been present during my interview. Their eyes dropped when recognition hit. Then the door swung open. In walked Jacob Trask, distracted and hurried. He glanced at me, then froze. "You," he said, voice low with disbelief. I met his stare. "Me." Everett looked between us. "You 2 know each other." I didn't miss a beat. "Your son interviewed me for an analyst role here. 18 months ago, he said my resume was trash." The tension in the room thickened. Everett cleared his throat. "We're glad you're here now. We need insight and urgently. Let's begin. Show me your analysis." For the next hour, I reviewed their projections. The errors were glaring. They had used legacy models blind to modern cultural and behavioral indicators, the very blind spots my system was designed to catch. I stood at the front of the room, the same one where I'd once been dismissed, and walked them through the precise signals they'd missed: labor unrest in overlooked regions, unexpected dips in energy supply chains, shifts in digital ad spend. "Your $30 million loss could have been prevented," I said calmly. "But that's not your biggest concern. My data suggests another $90 million loss is looming if you don't pivot immediately." The room went still. Everett paled. "How confident are you?" 97%. He turned to the board. "We need her. Clara, name your price." This was the moment I had imagined every time I sharpened my model, every late night I spent refining code. I looked around the room, finally resting my eyes on Jacob. "I'm not for sale." Everett blinked. "Excuse me." But I continued. "I'll consult on one condition." "Anything?" he said quickly. I smiled. "I want 15 minutes to present my resume to your board. Properly. This time, no interruptions." Jacob's expression collapsed into disbelief. Everett hesitated, then nodded. "Done. Let's just say..." "I didn't need all 15 minutes. Your son will sit through it." "No interruptions." Jacob shifted in his seat. "That's absurd. We don't have time." "Done." Everett Trask cut in, silencing him. "Now tell us how to stop the bleeding." "Still here." "Good." Most people would have clicked away by now. Missing what's coming next? If you're following this story, be sure to subscribe, because the kind of revenge I'm about to describe doesn't just end careers. It reshapes entire legacies. Let me show you how I dismantled an empire with nothing but truth. If you found power in this story, hit subscribe, because the next chapter might just be the one that mirrors your own. For the next week, I worked alongside Trask and Rowan's analysts, calmly implementing the system that had saved our clients at Beacon Ridge. I was focused, cordial, professional, and I made sure never to be alone with Jacob. What I witnessed inside the firm was worse than I expected. Promotions handed out based on family ties. Brilliant employees overlooked because they lacked the right pedigree. Innovation suffocated under arrogance. And Jacob Trask, at the center of it all. A mediocre strategist with a golden surname and unchecked influence making million-dollar decisions with borrowed insight and blind confidence. But here's what no one knew. Those 18 months after he'd thrown my resume in my face, I wasn't just building algorithms. I was watching them tracking every decision, every earnings call, every investor stumble. When their stock slipped, after consecutive weak quarters, I quietly began buying in. Not enough to raise flags, but enough to gain a minor yet strategic voting stake when aligned with others. Behind the scenes, I'd also nurtured connections with their 3 largest institutional investors, offering sharp, anonymous insight through trusted channels. They didn't know my name, but they knew my accuracy, and they respected it. Then, the day came, my 15-minute board presentation. Thanks to my guidance, Trask and Rowan had avoided the $90 million disaster I predicted. They were recovering. Everett was in a better mood, leaning back as he gestured to the room. "The floor is yours, Ms. Monroe," he said, though I still don't understand why the formality. Jacob sat farthest from me, his face taut with suspicion. I plugged in my laptop, but instead of a resume, I displayed a chart. "This graph shows your firm's performance over the past 5 years," I began. The red markers highlight major investment decisions led by Jacob Trask. The board leaned forward. Jacob bristled. 84% of those decisions underperformed the market. 26% led to significant losses. Jacob's voice cracked. "What is this?" "This isn't your resume." "On the contrary," I said. "It's exactly what my resume represents: analytical thinking and strategic risk assessment. And right now, the greatest threat to your company's future is seated at this table." Everett's expression darkened. "Ms. Monroe," we agreed. "To let me present my resume without interruption," I said calmly. "Which I'm doing." Slide after slide, I laid out the numbers. Department performance under Jacob's leadership. Lost client revenue, missed opportunities. "This isn't personal," I added. "It's structural. Your firm is hemorrhaging because decisions are based on legacy, not logic." The room was dead silent. Then came my final slide. "This is my proposal," I said. "Restructure the executive team based on performance. Implement my predictive model across departments. Create a governance policy that limits unilateral decisions regardless of last name." I turned to Everett. "You asked my price. This is it. Adopt these changes or watch your company continue its decline." A board member, an older woman I recognized as a former SEC chair, spoke up. "And what gives you the authority to demand this?" Exactly what I'd been waiting for. 3 things, I replied. 1. My proven results acknowledged by your CEO. 2. My position as a voting shareholder. Gasps around the room. And 3, I finished the backing of your 3 largest institutional investors. They've reviewed this proposal. They agree with it. And they've authorized me to deliver this message. If these reforms aren't enacted, they will call for a vote of no confidence at the next shareholder meeting. I let that settle. Jacob looked like he'd swallowed glass. Now they were finally listening. The silence was crushing. Everett Trask looked like someone had knocked the air out of him. Jacob's face was pale, lips pressed into a flat line. The board member who had challenged me earlier tapped her pen once, then nodded. I moved that we enter immediate discussion on Ms. Monroe's proposal. "Seconded," said another voice quickly. I gathered my laptop and notes. "You have my contact information. Let me know when you reach a decision." At the door, Everett found his voice. "Wait. This was your plan all along?" I paused, hand resting on the brushed steel handle. I turned back to face them. The same room, the same people who once dismissed me. "The moment your son threw my resume in my face and called it garbage," I said evenly, "I decided one day I'd show him exactly what he threw away." Then I walked out, leaving them to weigh the data and their future. The numbers, as always, were on my side. 3 days later, the call came. "The board has voted." Everett said, voice tight but composed. "Your proposal has been accepted. In full." I allowed myself a quiet moment of satisfaction. "I'm glad to hear it." There's more, he continued. They've asked me to offer you a permanent position, head of risk assessment and market strategy. You'd report directly to the board. I blinked. I had expected consulting work. Not this. And Jacob? I asked. A pause. He'll be reassigned to a more suitable role. Translation demoted. I'll think about it, I replied, though I already knew the answer. I'll call you tomorrow. That evening, I sat with Eleanor on the rooftop patio of her Capitol Hill brownstone, the Seattle skyline glowing in amber and gold. She listened as I recounted everything. So she said, swirling a neat bourbon, "You taking it? If I do, I could overhaul their entire framework, inject real methodology across every department. The impact would be massive," she said. But that's not what I asked. What do you want, Clara? What did I want? Revenge achieved, power earned, recognition already growing. I want to matter, I said quietly. I want my work to mean something. Eleanor nodded once. Then you know what to do. The next morning, I called Everett. I'll accept the position on 3 conditions. Name them. First, I'm bringing 2 analysts from my current team. Second, I have full control over risk assessment operations, no interference. And third, I paused, letting it hang. Jacob reports directly to me for the first 6 months. Silence. That last one might be difficult. It's non-negotiable, I said calmly. If he remains in the company, he needs to understand the system that saved it. And who better to teach him? Another pause. I'll talk to him. No, I replied. This isn't a father-son discussion. It's a decision between you and your new executive director. If the board won't agree to all 3 conditions, I walk. 2 hours later, he called back. They've accepted. All 3. And that's how. 4 weeks after nearly watching the company implode, I walked into Trask and Roan as the new head of risk assessment and market strategy. My office was on the 42nd floor, larger than Jacob's had ever been. A small potted plant sat on my desk with a note from the board, "Thank you for your vision." My first act, a company-wide meeting. Every employee from junior analysts to division heads attended in person or via live stream. I stood at the podium scanning the crowd, eyes full of curiosity, skepticism, hope. In the back stood Jacob, arms crossed, expression unreadable. For too long, I began this company relied on outdated models, ignoring how real-world behavior impacts market shifts. That ends today. I explained my methodology in clear, practical language, how we'd integrate cultural patterns, behavioral economics, and predictive signals often missed. This isn't just about minimizing risk, I concluded. It's about spotting the opportunity in the noise. It's about hearing the story. Numbers are trying to tell if you know how to listen. A pause. Then applause, hesitant at first, then growing stronger. Change had begun. And this time, I would be the one writing the model. As employees filed out of the meeting room, several stopped to introduce themselves or ask follow-up questions. I made eye contact with each one, logged their names, and quietly noted who was open and who was resistant. Jacob remained at the back, arms crossed. When the last person left, he approached. "Impressive performance," he said. His tone, however, suggested anything but praise. "The board seems convinced you're some kind of prophet." I smiled. Not a prophet. Just someone who notices the details others ignore. His jaw tightened. "So what exactly do you expect me to do now that I'm your subordinate?" "Learn," I said. "Starting tomorrow, 8 a.m., my office." The next morning, he showed up at 8:15. "You're late?" I said, not looking up from my screen. "I had breakfast with a client," he replied, dropping into the chair across from me. "No, you didn't," I said, still typing. "You had coffee downstairs, then waited to make a point." His brow furrowed. "The cup sleeve in your hand is from that cafe. It has today's date. And according to your calendar and lobby logs, you've used the client meeting excuse 17 times in the past year." I slid a folder across the desk. "Your first assignment, a full analysis of the Meridian market collapse using your preferred traditional models. Tomorrow, you'll redo it using mine. Then we compare." He didn't move. "This is beneath me," he said. "No," I corrected. "Until now, you've been beneath it." He flushed. You're enjoying this. If this were about revenge, I replied, you wouldn't be in that chair. You'd be gone and security would be escorting you. He blinked. You're still here because you might be useful. You understand client behavior. You know the legacy systems. That knowledge has value. I tapped the folder again. Get to work. Preliminary report by 4. Still here with me? Good. Most people don't have the attention span to learn how power actually works. It's not about taking someone down. It's about rebuilding the system around you. If you're invested in how I transformed a broken empire, hit subscribe. Because the most satisfying revenge isn't seeing them fall. It's rising until they're irrelevant. The following week shifted the entire culture at Trask & Roan. My system went live across all divisions. Accuracy improved. Clients returned. Stock prices inched upward. I worked 14-hour days, learning every crevice of the business, fixing weaknesses, re-engineering decision-making. I hired based on competence, not connections. I promoted those who earned it, regardless of their background. And I kept watching Jacob. To my surprise, he did the work. His first report was sloppy, but it showed effort. Each new assignment improved. About 2 months in, I found him still at his desk at 9 p.m., surrounded by charts and printouts. He looked up clearly, exhausted. I'm trying to figure out this correlation, he said. It's not fitting any of the usual models. I glanced over the data. That's because it's not linear. Stop separating the variables. Watch what happens when you chart these 3 indicators together. I walked him through it. For 20 minutes, he asked the right questions, the first meaningful ones I'd ever heard from him. As I turned to go, he asked quietly, "Why are you helping me?" I paused. Because potential without discipline is worthless. You have the former. I'm teaching you the latter. You still hate me, he said. No, I replied. I don't hate you. I nothing you. You're a variable in a system I'm optimizing. 2 more months passed. Our Q3 results were approaching, and with them my first formal presentation to the full board and top shareholders. The preparation was intense. Data, runs, live stress tests, 20-hour days. But the numbers told a clear story. And this time, I'd be the one writing the narrative. Jacob continued to improve. He wasn't brilliant, but he was becoming competent. He stopped being late, stopped making excuses, started asking questions instead of pretending to know. The morning of the board meeting, I found a report on my desk, a detailed analysis of emerging risks in an Asian market we'd been eyeing for expansion. Thorough, clean, solid. The name at the top, Jacob Trask. I sent him a message. See me. He arrived promptly. I held up the report. You wrote this. He straightened. Yes, every part. It's good, I said. Which is why I'm confused. The system timestamp says you finished it at 2 a.m. It wasn't assigned. He shifted his weight. I noticed some indicators last night while reviewing something else. They reminded me of a pattern you showed me last month. I thought it might be important. You did this voluntarily? He nodded. Yeah, it just needed to be done. And I thought someone might overlook it. For the first time, he looked like an actual analyst, not someone pretending. You're presenting this to the board, I said. What? No. I'm not ready. If you did the work, you can explain it. That's what analysts do. They don't just run numbers, they find meaning and they communicate risk. This could save us millions. I checked the time. Meeting's at 11. You have 3 hours. He left, looking stunned. At the board meeting, I presented our quarterly results first. The numbers spoke for themselves: 31% improvement in predictive accuracy, 24% boost in client retention, risk-related losses down significantly. Everett Trask was all smiles. Remarkable work, Ms. Monroe. You've exceeded expectations. Thank you, I replied. But today's most valuable insight comes from another analyst. Heads turned. Jacob Trask has identified a critical risk pattern worth your immediate attention. The room shifted. Jacob hadn't attended a board meeting since his demotion. He stepped to the front, visibly nervous but steady. He connected his laptop and presented clearly, without the performative flair he once relied on. Just data. Solid reasoning. When he finished, the room was still. How confident are you in this assessment? One board member asked. Jacob glanced at me, then back. 89%. Based on the methodology, Ms. Monroe implemented the correlation mirrors past contractions in similar economies. And your recommendation? Immediate reduction in sector exposure. Reallocation to the target markets on page 12. The board deliberated for 20 minutes, then approved it unanimously. As we exited, I saw Everett pull Jacob aside. I couldn't hear the exchange, but both men looked changed afterward. Later that afternoon, Everett stopped by my office. Well, he said, lowering into the chair across from me that was unexpected. His work deserved the spotlight, I said. Not because of his last name, because of the quality of his thinking. Everett studied me. 6 months ago, he threw your resume back at you. Today you gave him a platform. I gave the work a platform I corrected. He earned it. You've transformed him. No, I said. I've created a culture where mediocrity has consequences and excellence is rewarded. He's transforming himself. Everett nodded quiet. Your 6-month condition ends next week, he said. What do you plan to do with him? I'd been thinking about that. That depends on him. If he keeps producing, he'll advance based on merit. If not, he stays where he is until he earns something different. Everett stood to leave, then paused at the door. You know, when you pitched your restructuring plan, I thought it was about revenge. It wasn't. I can see that now, he said. You weren't trying to destroy us. You were trying to build something better. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The following week marked exactly 6 months since I took over risk strategy at Trask and Roan, and I had no plans to slow down. The company had changed in ways few expected. Nepotism had been replaced with accountability. Tradition gave way to innovation. Rhetoric faded beneath results. On a quiet Friday afternoon, I found Jacob Trask waiting outside my office. Do you have a minute? He asked. I gestured for him to come in. What can I do for you? He stepped inside and closed the door behind him, pausing awkwardly. Today marks 6 months. Yes, I said. It does. I've been thinking about... That day, he said. The interview. I nodded. I've never actually apologized, he admitted. No, I replied. You haven't. He exhaled. I'm sorry, he said. Throwing your resume, calling it garbage, that wasn't just rude. It was cruel. I did it because I could. Because no one had ever held me accountable. I stayed silent. You were right, he continued. I didn't understand real analysis until you forced me to do it. I didn't recognize value until you showed me the cost of ignoring it. He placed a folder on my desk. This is my resignation. I looked at him surprised. You're quitting. No, he said. I'm applying. For the junior analyst position in your department. No shortcuts. No special treatment. I opened the folder. Inside was a plain, honest resume. Not glossy, not inflated. Just facts, experience, and effort. At the top, a handwritten note. Not garbage anymore, but still needs work. I looked up. Why? Because I want to earn my place, he said. And I finally understand what you've been trying to teach me. I studied him for a long moment. The arrogant air was gone. In his place stood someone humbled but not defeated. Someone who had finally chosen growth over entitlement. Application accepted, I said. You start Monday. New desk, new responsibilities. Relief flickered across his face. Thank you. I won't let you down. This isn't about me, I replied. It's about the standard, the same one everyone else is held to. He nodded. Understood. As he turned to leave, I called after him. Jacob? He paused. Your risk report last week saved the company roughly $22 million. He blinked. That's the power of paying attention to the details others overlook, I said. A quiet smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. Like a resume from someone without the right name? Exactly like that. 6 months had changed both of us. I had come in seeking revenge and discovered something more powerful, the ability to rebuild what had once been broken. He had arrived with privilege and empty confidence and discovered the satisfaction of earning respect. That Monday, when Jacob arrived at his new desk in the analyst's bullpen, he found a frame waiting for him. Inside was the resume he'd once thrown in my face, creased but preserved. Below it, a small brass plaque read, "Where we begin is not where we end." The most powerful revenge isn't public humiliation. It's changing the system that enabled it in the first place. It's creating a workplace where merit matters more than names, where results speak louder than ego, and where people rise because they've earned it, not inherited it. It's building a world where someone can walk into a room with nothing but ideas and walk out having changed everything. If you've made it this far, you understand something vital about real power. It isn't about winning in the moment. It's about building something that lasts. If this story meant something to you, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. We share stories every week about people who turned pain into power and created a future on their terms. And if you've lived through something like this, if someone once underestimated you, share your story in the comments, because your journey might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today.